Mackenzie Mgbako could win Freshman of the Year for Indiana basketball.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. It is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. Shout out to the everydayers, the ones that are here every single day, making this a part of your daily routine. A reminder that we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventure could be around the next corner? Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada and go find your next big adventure. Check them all out today at nissanusa.com. Thank you so much for being here. If you're on the YouTube video version, like the video, subscribe to the channel. It takes one tap each. It is free. It is easy. And that's all you have to do. And it helps us out tremendously. So thank you so much for doing that. If you're on the audio platforms, you can turn on notifications wherever you get your podcast and you never miss the newest episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Mackenzie Mgbako, he could be the freshman Big Ten of the year if he continues playing the way that he's playing. And I think that the way that he has played is enough for him to be at least in the consideration to be Big Ten Freshman of the Year. And here's why. He has really come on strong. I think he's really come on strong. He had a slow start. He had a slow start. That's fine. But, man, down the stretch and through Big Ten play, he has really gotten better. I think he's in contention with two other players around the Big Ten for Big Ten Freshman of the Year. We'll talk about that on the show today. Plus, we'll get into some keys to the game for the game over the weekend. Both games, actually, both teams, believe it or not, are playing Maryland. The men are at Maryland. The women are hosting Maryland. So we've got those two games to talk about on the show today. As the year comes to an end, Player of the Year pretty much wrapped up. That's going to be Zach Edey. But Big Ten Freshman of the Year, most people have said it comes down to Iowa's Owen Freeman, Minnesota's Cam Christie, and Indiana's Mackenzie Mgbako. Now, I know a lot of you would say, well, he didn't really have a great start. Hasn't been really consistent. Does he really deserve to be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year? And I think he does. I think he does deserve to be Big Ten Freshman of the Year because of that slow start and because of the turnaround and really the consistent factor that he's been and the player that Indiana has needed most of the time to even be in some of these games that they've been in. And without Mackenzie Mgbako, a lot of the losses would have probably been worse. Now, I know his shooting numbers are not great. I know that the shooting numbers aren't going to blow you away by any means, but his scoring has really gone up. His defense has gotten a lot better. And I think his basketball IQ has really taken a step up. Not that he wasn't a smart player, but he's just learning and growing within the game as a freshman throughout Big Ten play. And look, I don't think a lot of people outside of Bloomington would say he should be it. And I think there's a big part of you that would say he shouldn't be it anyway. But comparing what he has done to the forward Owen Freeman from Iowa, look, he's won Big Ten Freshman of the Week 9 times so far this season. Most people would say he's probably the favorite. 6'10", averaging 11 points, 6.5 rebounds, almost 2 blocks a game is pretty absurd. Shoots the ball at a very high level from the floor at 64%. Doesn't shoot free throws very well and doesn't shoot threes hardly at all. So, he's a guy that gets double-digit scoring, double-doubles. He's going to block shots, grab rebounds, and he's going to be a consistent scorer. He is a good player. He is. I don't think he is the electric player that a lot of teams are looking for, but you want to talk about a constant, and I think Freeman has got that. You also look at the other player that I was talking about with Minnesota's Cam Christie, who I think is right there with the others in the mix. 6'6" guard who is now averaging 11 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2 assists per game, shooting 43% from the field, 41% on three with 134 shots and 77% at the free throw line. Those stats are from Hoosiers Now, the Sports Illustrated site for Indiana. Look, that's a lot more consistent. That's a lot better shooting, more on the exciting factor of things. And then I think Mgbako, I know the slow start really got him. And it was a slow start, and it was a bad start. Folks, do you remember us having conversations on this show about Mackenzie Mgbako shouldn't be starting? Do you remember having those conversations? I do. But yet here we are, and I think you can make a legitimate argument for him to be Freshman of the Year. He's also a Freshman of the Year candidate on a team in Indiana that just isn't or hasn't been all of that great, right? It just hasn't been the best team in the Big Ten, and it's been a struggle a lot of the times this year because guess what? Out of those teams that I just said, Minnesota and Iowa, both of those teams are above Indiana in the current standing. So by the numbers, Mackenzie Mgbako is the best player on the worst team. So does that mean he should get Freshman of the Year because he's putting up similar numbers as those guys, but he's doing it on a worse squad? I don't know. You tell me. Some people, when it comes to like an MVP or player of the year, it's the best player on the best team. I don't necessarily agree with that. Here's how I say it. Here's how I look at it. Take that player off the roster. Take that player away from that team. Where are they? How much different is that team if you take that player off that roster? Well, I think Mackenzie Mgbako, maybe not totally directly, but maybe indirectly, has won Indiana some games this year. I think you could probably make the argument he's lost Indiana some games this year, but those other teams at least have a few other playmakers. Minnesota, maybe not so much. Iowa's got some guys that can play. So overall, yeah, I think that Mackenzie Mgbako deserves it. And if he wins, I don't think it should be a surprise. If the other guys win, I don't think that should be a surprise either. But you can make that argument, and I'm making it right now, that he has played well enough. His growth should be acknowledged. His getting better should be acknowledged. And the steps that he has taken through this year are truly remarkable. That's why I think there is a very high chance, and I think he's in the final running to be the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. Well, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, we'll take a look at keys to the game for the games over the weekend. Indiana and Maryland, the men going to Maryland and the women hosting Maryland. Both of those things coming up on Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by Nissan. Are you the kind of driver that likes to push things a little further? Ever wonder what adventures could be around the next corner? Our friends at Nissan have a lineup of SUVs with the capabilities to take your adventure to the next level. The 2024 Nissan Rogue is perfect for city drives and great escapes, has class-exclusive Google built in is your always updating assistant to call on from almost everything. Gone are the days of connecting your phone. Google Assistant, Google Maps, and Google Play Store are built right into the 12.3-inch HD touchscreen infotainment system. The 2024 Rogue is the perfect midsize crossover for your next adventure. You can also check out the 2024 Nissan Armada. It will change what you expect from a full-size SUV. Picture a rugged 4x4 that can seat up to 8 in first-class luxury and style. Tow bigger and explore further in the 2024 Armada. Take the Nissan Rogue, Nissan Pathfinder, or Nissan Armada to go find your next big adventure. Shop NissanUSA.com. Welcome back to Locked On Hoosiers, your first listen each and every day, and I appreciate you making that so. We are free and available, never behind a paywall. Everything is free, every single episode, wherever you get your podcast. Well, as we were mentioning, the Indiana and Maryland game coming up this weekend for the men and getting down to it. 2 road games in a row at Maryland, then at Minnesota before coming home and finishing the regular season against Michigan State. And we talk about this all the time. Keys to the game. Look, this Maryland team, they're not all that great, okay? They're really not. They're 15-14 overall. They've lost 3 out of their last 4 games. They've lost 6 out of their last 8. All right, their last 2 wins were Iowa at home and on the road at Rutgers. And they're coming off of a loss, 81-68, at home against that Northwestern team, something that we know a whole lot about here in Indiana. So you look at this team statistically just for a second, and they've got some players, sure. Jahmir Young, yeah, I'd say he's pretty good. He averages 21 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, couple of steals. He does average a few turnovers, but he also shoots 40% from the floor, 90% from free throw line, and 35% from behind the arc. So I think the strategy is pretty simple here. We know Julia Reese is good and we know Donta Scott's good, but hey, there's one simple game plan. Don't let him beat you. That's pretty much all you got to worry about here in this game. And if you can do that, I think you're going to be okay. He dropped 24 points against Northwestern, 12 points against Rutgers, and 20 at Wisconsin. So, yeah, if you're Indiana, make somebody else beat you. If you're the Hoosiers, do not let it be Jahmir Young. That's my very first key to the game. Don't let him do it. He's too good. We remember what this guy has done to us in the past. We remember what Maryland is capable of doing. He is the reason that I think Maryland could be one of those, I don't know, sleeper teams maybe in the Big Ten tournament. I think is something you have to consider because, man, he can flat out play. He can flat out play basketball. He's one of those guys that just has the takeover factor, has the ability to win a basketball game when a team is not playing well. And that's dangerous. Something we don't have, I don't think, where he can just go and get a bucket. And you look at this team as a whole, Maryland shoots 41% from the floor. They're 72% from the line, which is pretty good. And they only shoot 28% from 3. Oh, haven't we seen this before? Haven't we seen a team that just can't shoot can't shoot 3-pointers very well, and then we play them, we get to them, and they're like, oh, wow, they're leaving us wide open. Let's start shooting the 3-ball. And guess what? They start making it. It's unbelievable how that goes down and how that happens. Hopefully, we have learned. I think we defended the 3-point line pretty well against Wisconsin, all things considered. Yeah, they made some tough shots, but good teams are going to do that. This Maryland team, they don't care. They'll shoot it, but studies and numbers say they're not going to make it very often. So maybe give them the 3. I don't know. I think it's something to consider. You're also talking about a Maryland team that doesn't score the basketball very much. They lost to Ohio State in double overtime, 50 minutes of basketball and only scored 75 points. We're talking about a Maryland team that has scored 70 points, 63 points, and 68 points in the last 3 games. If Indiana can touch and creep up to 80, we're going to win. Now, that's a tall task. It's on the road, somewhere we have not played well at all. I think we have to go back to what worked against Wisconsin. Use Trey Galloway, use Kel'el Ware, use Malik Reneau, get them in the pick and roll game. Put the ball in the hands of Galloway. He acted like he wanted it the other night against Wisconsin. Let's see if he really wants it this weekend on the road in the Xfinity Center. I'm curious to see if he carries that mentality from game to game. And I'm also curious to see if Mike Woodson carries a little fire with him as well, coming off that big win. Something we've talked about. Maybe he saved his job. I don't know. But a lot of you didn't agree with that. But I think in the eyes of Indiana, it very well might have. I'm curious to see if he brings that with him. Does he have a chip on his shoulder? Does he have something to prove? Or is this just a typical Mike Woodson coach game where it's like, oh, well, this isn't working, but this is our game plan. We're going to stick with it and hope it works. No, make adjustments. They're making adjustments. Why don't we do that too? I hope that's happening with this team and Mike Woodson, because you are on the road at Maryland. And as I mentioned, you've got Maryland on the road, you have Minnesota on the road, and then you come home for Michigan State. And look, you're on the road. You can't turn the ball over. And sorry, but we got to make some shots. We're going to have to hit 6 or 7 threes, I think. Maybe 5 to 6 in this game to have a chance. Because, yeah, the game hasn't changed. You still got to score to win. And do that, you got to knock down shots. And we just haven't done that this year, man. We haven't done that much this year. But when we do, we win. And even in the Wisconsin game, when it was 74-70, we still hit shots when it mattered. We still fought for loose balls when it mattered. We got rebounds when it mattered. Those things have to happen again this weekend on Sunday afternoon when Indiana plays Maryland. And also, why do we keep scheduling games for the men and the women to play at the exact same time? Who came up with that idea? That was dumb. That's happening on Sunday. Indiana plays at Maryland, then at Minnesota in the midweek, and then home versus Michigan State next week before the Big Ten tournament. And that's what you have to remember, too, is look at where Maryland, Minnesota, and Michigan State sit in the Big Ten standings. I'll pull those up for you really quickly. You're still talking about Big Ten seeding because Maryland is a bottom 4 team in the conference. And guess what? So are we. We are a bottom 4 team as of right now. So you cannot afford a loss to Maryland, who's only half a game back from you. You have to win this game. You have to beat Minnesota, who's a full game ahead of you. And I think you have to beat Michigan State, who's 2 games ahead of you, if you want to stay out of that bottom floor basement of the Big Ten standings and when the Big Ten tournament comes around. Well, coming up on Locked On Hoosiers, Indiana women hosting Maryland. We'll talk about that. Look at bracketology, latest standings there as well. We'll have that for you in the final segment of Locked On Hoosiers. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Again, Indiana and Maryland. You want to put money on it? Get on FanDuel. Put $5 down on who you think's going to win. If you get it right, they're going to give you $150 for free. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Final segment on the show today. Appreciate you being here. Happy Friday. Hope you're going to have a fantastic weekend. Looking on the women's side of things as the Hoosiers, Lady Hoosiers that is, hosting Maryland inside of Assembly Hall season finale, regular season finale that is, as the Hoosiers are now officially out of the Big Ten race because the Ohio State Buckeyes clinched the Big Ten the other night, the regular season title. So shout out and congrats to the Ohio State Buckeyes. But Indiana still up near the top of the conference standings. We talked about their tiebreaker with Iowa and how Iowa and Ohio State, I know it doesn't technically mean anything anymore, but man, what a big time game that is with 2 top 5 teams in the Big Ten. Good news is we're hosting a Maryland team that just isn't very good in this season when you look at it, when all things are considered here. And the last time these two teams played, we got the win 87-73. You look at some of the stats and the box score from that game. Mackenzie Holmes had another good game, 23 points, 8 of 14 from the floor, 7 of 8 from the free throw line, and 10 rebounds. Another double-double for her in the last time these two teams played. And that was on the road in Maryland. So, look, shouldn't have any problem here. Shouldn't have any struggles here. You also had Scalia go off for 22 with 4 of 8 from downtown. I'd love to see Indiana let it fly this weekend. The ladies, that is. Let it fly. Have some fun. It's the last regular season game that you're going to play at home this year. And while, yes, there's a chance you still play some more games inside this building, you've got to take advantage of this time right here before you go on to the Big Ten tournament. Use this game as a building block, right? If you're out ahead and you have a big lead, maybe we pull Mackenzie Holmes. Maybe we pull Scalia, right? Maybe we pull some of our better players if we happen to have a big lead coming down the home stretch of this game. And look, I think this team's chemistry is really, really good. You can see the ball movements there. You can see the off-ball movement is there. You can see the shot making, shot creating, shot taking. The confidence is there with this team. And you know, to have a coach like they do who's just so talented and knows her team. And with Terry Moore, and you have a really, really good coach. And side note on her, she was just announced as the head coach of the USA Basketball Women's U18 national team. So, yeah, I'd say we're being coached by a pretty good ball coach right now with Terry Moore. And so shout out to her and congratulations to her. Indiana women hosting Maryland this weekend in the final game of the regular season. Should not be a problem. Hoosiers should get that done. They're 23-4 right now and 14-3 in conference play. Current standings of the Big Ten on the women's side going into the final regular season weekend. You look at it, as I mentioned, the Big Ten's already been wrapped up. Ohio State won the regular season there. Indiana is clear of Nebraska in the 4 spot. It all comes down to Iowa and Ohio State. If Iowa wins, they'll remain at the 2 spot. If Iowa loses and Indiana wins, then the Hoosiers would jump them and become the 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. So that's what's at stake here, whether we are the 2 or the 3. I think there's a good chance we become the 2 because we have the tiebreaker, well, there is no tiebreaker with Iowa because it's split 1-1. And we're both 2 games back of Ohio State, but Iowa is playing Ohio State. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think that game, I don't know. It is at Iowa. I don't know. At Iowa, early on Sunday afternoon on Fox, man, that's a tough game to pick. You almost got to go with Iowa, right? Just being at home with Caitlin Clark. I'll say this. I think Ohio State's the better team. I think they're the better team than Iowa, but God, Caitlin Clark's so good. Announcing she's going to the WNBA. Shout out to her as well. But look, all things considered, Indiana Hoosiers, the women, they'll be a top 3 seed in the Big Ten tournament. Should be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, I would think. I still think that should be higher, but I also think we make a run in the Big Ten tournament. So all things considered, Indiana women are doing good things. They've got one more regular season game before they get into postseason play. We will have all of that covered for you right here on Locked On Hoosiers, and the men too, as they finish out their regular season with Maryland, Minnesota, and Michigan State. They'll have the Big Ten tournament and then the NCAA tournament. Crazy how it is March, man. It is March 1 today, and the best month of basketball is here. Unfortunately, one of our teams will be in it. One of our teams, barring a crazy, stupid run in the Big Ten tournament, the men are not going to be in March Madness, and that's something that we're going to talk a lot about because that's a problem. That's a big, big problem. This cannot become a trend on the men's side of things, but we will still cover the women, be huge fans like we always are of the women's team, and some spring football stuff going to be coming out too for Indiana. So excited to have that for you as well. Well, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen each and every day. Reminder, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast, on your audios platforms, YouTube. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. Anybody you know that's Indiana folks, share them this. Have this be a part of their daily routine, just like it is for you. We're having a lot of fun over here, so let's become a part of it, huh? We're growing like crazy. On YouTube, we are at 1845, man. We continue to push towards 1,900 and then 2,000 subscribers, and I thank you for getting us to that number. Have a great weekend. We will have a reaction episode. Video will go up on Sunday afternoon after the game. Audio will go live Monday morning, so keep an eye out for that. That's all coming up this weekend and getting into next week. So until next time, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.